Good evening. I am here with Rebecca Chapman with Springs to Sea, and I am so excited to have this conversation with you, Rebecca. How about we start off with, because I think you're new to this live stream, and I'm excited to bring you back on. And you've been helping Fight for Zero collect water samples, so maybe just start with like, how did you get involved with Fight for Zero, and why was it important for you to get involved?
Wow, I will try to keep this concise because, like so many of us who are involved with Fight for Zero and our Fight for Clean Water, there's so many reasons. But I guess to answer the first question, how about me, so ecotourism is actually my third career. My first career was in hospitality and food and beverage, and I'm originally from Florida. I was born and raised in Orlando, and I've always been into nature. And then went to UCF, and but always into the outdoors. But I always was into the hospitality. I just enjoyed making people feel good. I enjoyed the social aspect of it, and being raised in Orlando, always being around tourists. But then I noticed that I spent about 10 years in food and beverage, and I noticed that a certain level of food and beverage is female dominated. But then once you get to like a certain point, it's very male dominated. And I kept struggling to make any kind of progress, even with a college degree. So I decided to make a shift over into health and wellness. I got in a 2011, I earned my 200-hour yoga teacher certification and started teaching yoga and got into health and wellness. And that was the beginning of the end of that part of my life, because I started learning about the system, that the food system, and how everything that I was taught about fitness, and I was an athlete, was wrong. I learned about genetically modified organisms and GMOs. And I was like, oh my gosh, all of this. And then the chemicals that go into our food. So I was learning about all these things that go into our body. So I did that. I did health and wellness for about 10 years. And then COVID happened. And my personal training and yoga classes, all the gyms shut down. And after kind of sitting at home, reevaluating, I tried to do the online yoga class thing, and it was okay for a while. But I think it was really difficult to really help people and have a effective yoga class. So I was like, what can I do? I was like, well, going outside is pretty safe. Everyone seemed pretty comfortable with doing things outside. And I had worked for another eco tour company for a couple of years already. And we had the busiest summer ever. Like the summer of 2020, nobody could do anything except go outside, and we were running tours. And we had to wear face masks on shore, things like that. But it was so busy. And October of 2020 is when I filed my LLC for my own eco tour business.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, 10 years. It was like 10 years in one career, 10 years in another career. And then I call myself at this point an active lifestyle professional. And now I specialize in outdoor things. So guided hikes, and we do outdoor yoga after the hikes sometimes, and paddleboard tours and kayak tours. And it's super, it's following my passion. I've always done things that brought me joy. I did work for the Florida Unemployment Call Center temporarily, and I did get a lot of intrinsic value from helping people. I was one of the few call center agents who actually wanted to help people. But that was not my passion. That wasn't my joy. And I followed my joy, and now I'm in my third year of running the eco tour business. So.
And I can tell you're so passionate about this because and it's not just that you're passionate. It's like anytime that I reach out to you, you're like, hey, there's this yoga class on this day, and you can come do this and do this. Like you care about people's health and trying to get them back active. I've talked to you about how like my gym closed down, and I'm really sad about it because I haven't been very active, and I can just imagine the amount of people's lives you've changed just doing that alone that first year, getting them out there on the water.
Yeah, it's funny. The expression is people find their whats when they come out with me, if you make sense. Like they get their guts back, they get their morale, they get their mojo back. So I've had so many people I take out on paddle boards, And I stopped calling them stand-up paddle boards because that would intimidate people. Like,
Okay.
I can't stand. I'm not going to do it because I can't stand. I'm like, but standing is optional.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them that to get them on the board. But then once they're out there, they do the kneeling thing and they realize that the boards are super stable. And they're like, you know, maybe I can. That little bit of their brain makes like a 5% allowance for the miraculous. And then the next thing you know, they're standing up, they're paddling around, their shoulders are back, their chest is puffed out. And I've had people who they went out, like this one, a friend of mine went out, just this shy, timid esthetician. And that woman came back a different person. She got rid of her toxic boyfriend. She grew her business. She brought on new staff, and she's just absolutely thriving. She gained this confidence that she didn't have before because she did something that she didn't think she was going to be able to do. And then she came back a new person. I've seen that with yoga. I had a lot of people coming to me very tearful after a yoga class. Like, for the first time in my life, I don't have back pain in this one spot, and it's just because of the class. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I love hearing that.
Yeah. Just imagine the people from across our nation and the globe that come here to visit, whether it's to watch the launches or to experience the fishing or Cocoa Beach or whatever the case is. They're leaving here with that experience to take back home. And that's what makes people like us who grew up here in Brevard County so proud to be from Brevard County and to have grown up here in Brevard County. It's businesses like yours that make it all worthwhile, whether it's something as simple as a sunset and paddling out to that sunset, or
so pretty.
It
never gets old.
Yeah. And so, like, we met because you had stepped up. I see you in so many aspects, like volunteering for all these different, just amazing causes. I don't know how you do it all. I really don't. You're like, you just go.
I'm exhausted all the time.
Yeah, you go, I'll take, because I had put out, like, I need, some people to help with taking samples for this 3-year academic study with PFAS. And you were like, well, hey, I'm out in the water anyway. Let me take some samples for you. And you did. And I just want you to know, like, how important that was to us and how appreciative we are of that. And you were actually at one of our annual retreats too.
Yes.
And that was fun. Like, it was off the St. John's River. That's the one you were at, right?
Yes. So we did some yoga, hung out around the fire, had some amazing food, had a little taco night.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was really fun. And I look forward to the next one for sure.
Yes, the next one is coming up, and I'm pretty excited about that too. So what, like you said, paddleboarding and yoga, are there other services that you offer?
Yeah. So one of the things that is one of the most popular things I do is called a bucket list tour. And we get on the kayaks and we go out on the Indian River Lagoon a couple hours before sunset. We go see the manatees, and then we watch the sunset from the water. And then we wait about an hour after sunset, and we watch the bioluminescence, like the water comes alive with the bioluminescence, which that plankton bioluminescence is seasonal. So we don't really have that now. We're transitioning more to like a comb jelly season. But right now, and it's good for a lot of people who don't feel comfortable launching on the water at night. I get like, what about alligators at night? And they're going to climb on my kayak and eat me. And it's like, no. Like, you're fine. We do see them. And I point them out and be like, you see, it's way over there. And we're going to go way over here. And we're going to give each other plenty of space. You see how the alligator's swimming away from us? That's what we want it to do. That's a good sign.
And you definitely have the perfect personality where you're just extremely calm about if there was like a disaster happening around you, I feel like you're just so calm about it. You're just like, it's okay. Let's just take a couple steps this way.
Right. Just keep paddling. I mean, there's times where I have to put on like what I call my mom voice. It's like, no, do not stop and keep paddling. And then usually after that, I'm like, I'm sorry I had to raise my voice like that. I just needed you to know the seriousness. Because sometimes in the canal, it gets windy, or, there's a current, or sometimes there's a boat coming and they're looking at the water that's glowing and they're all splashing around. And then there's a shrimp, like a boat that's going too fast coming, Florida man's coming down the canal going too fast. No offense to Florida. I know not all Florida men, but
That's funny.
Yeah. And then I
So,
got to be like, come on, let's go. But then
yeah.
afterwards, I'll be like, I needed to be urged. I just had to convey the urgency. And they're usually like, no, I understand. I see what you mean. And thank you for making sure I was safe. And it's awesome. And I love ecotourism in the sense that we are bringing business out into an area. And so we all pay sales tax on ecotours because we use gear. Like if I do a guided hike and I don't have any gear, yoga classes, I don't have to charge sales tax. But if I'm on a kayak tour, I have to charge sales tax. Not only that, I pay a permit fee every
I
year.
was going to ask you to explain that to people because I don't think enough people really appreciate or understand that aspect of this.
Yeah, so there are only 6 outfitters that are permitted to operate commercial ecotours in the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge. So we have permits with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They're good for 1 year. We all have a lot of very strict requirements. There's 3 pages of rules that we all have to follow. And even me, I'm not even allowed to operate pure night tours. Like I have to come back shortly after sunset. Like that's all I can do because it's a legit reason. They want to make sure that the traffic and the cars that come out in that area aren't causing damage to the ecosystem. And they were supposed to do a care capacity study prior to COVID, but then COVID happens and everything got canceled. And of course, there's been new years and they have to add it back into the budget, which, they have to have all the staff and how science goes and studies. So that's not on the books yet, but I am happy with my little bucket list offering. And I found my little niche market with that. But anyway, so we're out there doing these tours and the government is making money and off of a land that is completely in its natural state. They did not have to put in any strip malls. They didn't have to put any theme parks or fake swimming pools. They didn't have to do anything like that. It is existing exactly how it naturally exists. And the state's making lots of sales tax dollars off of it. The county is making sales tax because there's this special, there's the Florida sales tax, and then each county has its own little sales tax that we add on. So the county is making money off of it. And it's amazing, but it also is a little bit disheartening too, because I have to sit here and watch. So I grew up fishing and shrimping Holliver Canal.
Okay.
These are childhood memories where we would go out on the pontoon boat. We would island hop all day, looking at all the animals in the seagrass beds. I would catch seahorses, like actual seahorses, like in this net, and eels, all kinds of animals. I'd always release them, of course, but it was just cool to see.
I used to scoop them up as a girl, the seahorses. Like I would literally do this and they would be in my...
Yeah.
So you're bringing that up and I'm like, and my brothers, they're always at Hollover Canal. My dad used to take us on the boat out there. So you're just like bringing back all of the memories.
Yeah. Holliver is a shell. It's a shadow of what it used to be. Although I have seen some seagrass, like more clumps of seagrass floating on the surface of the water. So like 2018, I would go out when I started doing the eco tours out there. I would see the people with their shrimp nets and be like, "Hey, the shrimp running tonight?" Or like, "No." And every single time, "No." And you wouldn't see any seagrass floating on the surface because shrimping there, one things you would look for is you would see the clump of seagrass floating down the water, and the like 2 or 3 little shrimps are like sitting on top of the seagrass. You just scoop up that little thing of seagrass and put the shrimp in the cooler, dump the seagrass back in the water, and continue on. And then we would stay up all night cleaning the shrimp, and my mom would cook it up into this like delicious garlic butter shrimp scampi the next day. And now I don't feel safe doing that. Now my 9-year-old, do I want to take him and fishing? And now that I live in Titusville, because that was back when I lived in like Winter Park and it was like an hour of a drive. Now I live walking distance to the Max Brewer Bridge, basically. And I don't feel safe taking him to the shoreline in my own town because of what's happened. I don't feel safe with the rising food costs. Would I like to be able to go catch my own food out 5 minutes from my house? Heck yeah. Do I feel safe doing it? No, because we know. And it's just really sad. So but I have noticed more clumps of seagrass floating on the surface. And one thing that I see all the time, I think about with ecotourism, is what it used to be. So I see people in these tourist groups all the time. Where can I go snorkeling near Cocoa Beach? Even when I'm kayaking, people ask me, can we go swimming in this? I'm like, I mean, you can wade in it, but I wouldn't submerge your mucous membranes, like nose, ears, eyes.
And
Don't.
it's so refreshing to hear that there's somebody out there that's trying to educate, like also allow people to enjoy, but you're educating them on the safety and the health aspect of it.
Like, I don't, where we are in the refuge, I feel safe kayaking there. Would I ever take anyone snorkeling? No, they'd be mad at me. Like, I'd get bad reviews because there's nothing to see. It's like maybe on a good day in the winter, but even then there's nothing to see, because if the water's clear, there's not really any life there. It's like a sandy bottom. You see predators. That's it. Like, you see the I've seen a few more blue crabs, but those are scavengers. So you see scavengers and predators. So lots of rays, lots of birds of prey, dolphins. You see the manatees all the time. Not really sure where they're getting their food, but I know Mosquito Lagoon has a decent amount of seagrass, so they probably go back and forth a whole bunch. But would I like to offer snorkeling as an eco tour? Absolutely. In the original Indian River Lagoon, we absolutely could have done that. Today's Indian River Lagoon, if we were able to start addressing every single problem that is contributing to the decline of the Indian River Lagoon, we might be able to offer snorkeling in like 10 to 15 years, maybe. That's a guess based on how what little improvement I saw during COVID, when people weren't messing with it as much, when there wasn't all the boating on it and all the extra nutrients from people wading in the water. Of course,
that's a good point. I mean, it did get better during that year. I think a lot of places across the globe were seeing those impacts of like the less human activity.
Yeah, the CO2 levels all went down across the world. So yeah, that was it could repair so quickly. It could, but we're all too distracted on, no, it's the septic tanks. No, it's the power plants. No, it's the grass clippings. No, it's the infrastructure. It's like, well, they're all right.
Yes.
Like, everyone is correct. It's all of those things. It's not just one of the problems.
And for some reason, people want to just blame one thing. And that's why we push so hard when we say stop the sources of pollution, because there's multiple sources and we've got to address all of them. And I'm glad to hear that there's seagrass coming back in the Mosquito Lagoon. And I'm going out there actually to get some footage of it. And I'm really excited to show like what the lagoon can be again. And to fix it. And it impacts our economy. I mean, we talk about our health and we talk about the wildlife decline and the decline of water quality and clarity. But a lot of people don't realize it also impacts our economy. I mean, the more people that get sick, the more money that it costs for them to get health care, and the less they can work and get jobs and work, full-time jobs. So it's like this trickle down impact. And, ecotourism is a big part of that economy here. And if you don't, like you said, you're bringing in revenue for the county, for the state on these ecotourisms. Like, what have you seen? I know that this is something you're really passionate about. So like, what would you like people that are, sitting with us right now to know more about with ecotourism and how they can support it?
So one thing that I don't think people realize is that, well, there's a couple of things. Ecotourism is the canary in the coal mine. If ecotourism goes, everything else is going to go. The beaches are going to go. The theme parks are going to go, because theme parks are outdoors. And if if all the retention ponds in Orlando are full of the lignum mats or cyanobacteria, and everything's just being thrown up in the air and aerosolized, and you can't go outside without getting your lungs irritated. And there's so many people who come to Florida because they're disabled and extreme cold aggravates their conditions. But then if they can't come here and the air is toxic and the water is making people sick, or if tourists here, like if we have toxic chemicals in our water that are causing cancer, people aren't going to travel here. And this really sounds messed up to say, but the only thing that's saving us there is that everywhere in the country has PFAS in their water. So it's not really something they'd be like, oh, it's only in Florida. Like it's everywhere. That's not an excuse to ignore it by any means. And it's not a good thing at all. But I think that's, one of the reasons why, and it varies municipality to municipality. I'll go somewhere like, like my hair, if I wash my hair at home, it's like super dry and frizzy. But if I teach classes for LA Fitness. So if I am in Orlando for a while and I want to take a shower after my class because I'm running errands afterwards, my hair is like so glorious and glossy after I take a shower in Orlando. I'm like, like what? And
I wonder if they filter.
It's possible,
Yeah, you should ask.
It's yeah, I should ask.
There's a question on the screen that says,
oh, okay.
Rebecca, what if any benefits did you see in working with Fight for Zero?
Well, working with Fight for Zero was not about personal benefit. It never was about personal benefit. It was all about contributing to the cause. And out of all of the organizations in this local area, the only one that showed the transparency and the drive and the willingness to work directly grassroots with the community was Fight for Zero. I've worked with so many different nonprofits in my life, and I've run cleanups. I've run road cleanups. I used to volunteer with Keep Seminole Beautiful. And the founder of that was I think he was the chair of the St. John's Water Management District for a long time back in the 90s and did a lot of really good things. And he was really frustrated. He unfortunately passed away several years ago, but yeah, he was amazing. His name was Mike Barr. He was a classic libertarian, not
wow.
calling themselves now.
I appreciate you saying that because that's one of our biggest things is being community driven. And I'm always constantly asking, all of our team, even our volunteers, like, what do you think about this? Could you give us input on this? Like, we're always seeking input from various voices. And, if I have a question because you're on the water all the time, I say, well, what do you think about, the Mosquito Lagoon? What do you think about, I know that you did sampling at one of the boat ramps, I think in Mims, was it? Scottsmore. Oh, even farther than Mims. That's
yeah,
right.
and I enjoyed that one. I really enjoyed exploring that way. But there was that one time I found this weird little oil pit out there.
Yeah,
that was bizarre.
Right, and you took a picture of it and sent it to me. But that's the beauty of it being community driven. Was it worth your time? Would you recommend to others to volunteer with them?
Absolutely. 100%. I felt so supported. So even through when I said, hey, I want to be part of the citizen science team, I was given extremely clear direction. Like there was no question on what my assignment was. There might have been one point where the locations, I was a little unclear. Like, am I going here? Am I going here? And it's like, oh, we got someone for this one. So go ahead and do this one. But once we got all of that, all the locations assigned, we were given our kits, we were given we didn't have to come up with our own toolkits. We were given all the bottles, the grabbers, detailed instructions on how to properly take the sample. And we were given training, like actual scientific method training, which for me, it was a wonderful refresher. And I use a lot of that training during when I do kids field trips. We talk about the science, a lot about the importance of the scientific method and having consistency and things like that. So that ended up benefiting me. The training that I received through Fight for Zero benefited me professionally on that level.
Wow, that's so cool to hear. And that you're teaching the kids. And I know that, why is it, I'm forgetting it, wildlife monitoring certificate. You did all the courses with what was it?
The Florida Master Naturalist.
That's right.
Yeah, I did the 3 core modules. So I am a Florida Master Naturalist, but I started the wildlife monitoring. Now I will say, I thought the wildlife monitoring was going to be studying prints and poop.
Yeah, me too. I took it. Yeah.
It was not that at all. It was the driest.
It was so, I remember like I was sitting there and I'm like, and then did you call them nuthatches?
No.
No, we went out in the middle of the woods, and they did this call, and all these birds came, and
Oh.
yeah, that was a fun part. There were good parts of it. It was just like not what I was expecting either.
Right. And it was valuable. I would say like I learned more from volunteering through Fight for Zero about monitoring environmental conditions than I did. But I have to say I didn't completely finish it. Some stuff in life came up and I couldn't make it to like the final classes. And I think I only went to like one of the field trips.
Well, we're super lucky too, because we have experts like environmental scientists and people that are helping like guide the way behind the scenes. And if it wasn't for them, I knew from the very beginning of this that we needed to reach out to the experts and get all of their input and get their partnerships. And so we've been really lucky that we've had those resources to help train us. And like, I've done a lot of certificates myself with, sampling and through Eurofins, which is a certified laboratory. And I just think it's so important to do community driven. And I think the more people in the community that learn this stuff, the more that we can take control of the situation that's happening and kind of bring it in our own hands. And so somebody said, and it's showing Facebook user. I don't know if it's showing that to you. They said, wow, thanks for all you do, Rebecca.
I'm just following the example of the amazing leaders that have been placed in my path. I've always had to, I feel like I've always had to make all the decisions for myself and other people in my life. And I've had to be like the boss a lot of times. And I love an opportunity to be led, and in a good way, right? Like I know the difference between following in a healthy way and not following the wrong way. But I follow the causes and what's trying to help the community. And there have been times as a business owner, I'm a member of the chamber, the local chamber of commerce, and we have these really special luncheons where we have people come out and talk to us. Like we had the NASA development manager come out and give us a presentation about how out of the 144,000 acres they manage, they have 7,000 developed and plans for 7,000 more acres to be developed. And we're seeing those plans move forward now.
Wow. So not to interrupt, but it's interesting that you just brought that up, because I literally just did a news interview about an expansion that's happening out there.
Oh, it's probably been in the works for at least a year.
Yeah. It's airing this evening on Fox 35, but I just wanted to put that out there so people can understand.
Good timing.
Yeah. So like you had to, I'm like, interesting.
We're on the same vibe there for sure.
Yeah.
But and we had one of these meetings with a presentation from a well-known large marine nonprofit, Indian Lagoon centered nonprofit. And I got a very disengaged response. I tried to talk to them, be like, they're talking about this thing. Oh, and then I brought up Fight for Zero and they acted like they didn't know Fight for Zero. And then I think I remember coming to you about it and you're like, they know what we're doing. That's weird that they would say it like that. I'm like,
yeah,
dang it. I thought I was networking.
So I've given them feedback, like some of these, the Lagoon affiliated groups, and we've been trying to come to the table on some stuff. And I have been giving them feedback about how disengaged they feel like when they have these conversations with the community, because it's only hurting them. It doesn't feel authentic,
right? Their
conversations. And like, even when they make posts online, it doesn't feel authentic. It's like, so I'm wanting to help in that aspect, because I just feel like it's hurting them. And if we really want to make a difference with the Indian River Lagoon, at the end of the day, we're all trying to get the same goal. We've got to find a way to get there collaboratively. We've always collaborated with other organizations where we can, when we can. Like Orca has been amazing. We've been dissecting fish for them, and and just volunteering where we can. Now Libby's popping up, so I'm just going to bring her on really quick.
Libby! Hi! I hope I see you in January.
Oh, she got kicked off. She'll come back on.
My bad.
It's you said my
Everybody
bad.
see that?
You said hi, then it popped off. It's
Should I
okay.
get out?
No. Wait a second. She just got kicked off somehow. Maybe she clicked a button or something like that. But what she was talking about was our upcoming annual retreat with all the advocates across the state of Florida. We're super excited about that. I was telling her about it.
I'm back.
But I told her just give it a minute. She'll be back.
Dad, go get the link real quick.
So Libby, we were just talking about like ecotourism and just her volunteer work and other work that she does and going through that. And
we're really glad to have made the connection a few years ago with you, Rebecca. At least me. I know Stell knew you before I did, but I was really grateful to meet you and have the opportunity to connect with you on the retreat. And like you said, we're getting ready to do it again. So I can't wait to see you again. We're going to have a great time.
Yes. And I hope I know last time I had to dip a little early, but I'm definitely going to make sure that I stay for at least the boat ride. I was so sad.
This time I think we're going to have a little bit more advance notice. We're working on it as we speak. We've got some great properties like that we've been using for these retreats. And for those watching and tuning in, we've been talking about, like, Rebecca showed me, you did like a whole live where you showed me property, because one of our goals is to give a space for cancer patients, survivors, and their families, like these same nature retreats, out in the woods, a way to heal. Like, if it wasn't for nature, and I'm writing this for my book, I'm publishing a book, and in my book, I talk about the moment that I hiked out in the Tennessee mountains with my children, and it gives me chills just talking about it right now. But and then I did backcountry camping. Like, I got a backcountry permit and I just went out and set up in the middle of the woods, and we had just this beautiful like week out in the woods. And that was my moment that I learned what my new direction in life was, and that I had this mission to come and figure out why my family got cancer. And again, I'm getting chills because I started writing that chapter recently. And so it's interesting we're talking about this retreat, because that's why these retreats are so important. It brings a lot of healing, a lot of unity, a lot of, what nature can do, and
absolutely,
and disconnecting from the world, and that collaboration, and
the fresh air and the sunshine. And so my mom recently recovered from bilateral breast cancer on both sides, both sides, double mastectomy. It came out of nowhere. I mean, like, she had her mammogram, and then she maybe I think she missed 1 year, and then she noticed a lump, and she went in and she had 5 tumors between both sides. And then she found out that there's 4 other families in her neighborhood, which is the neighborhood I grew up in. They all have been diagnosed with cancer. And one of the families, their young grandson was diagnosed. And so it's happening in Orlando and Winter Park too. And so I think the work that you're doing and that we're all doing together is making people aware, because once my mom found that out, she had her and my dad both sign the petitions for the right to clean water. And I sent her to your website. I'm like, I'm sure there's a database where you can log in and track your information. I'm like, go to the Fight for Zero. It's going to send you all the stuff. And she has been blasting it to all her neighbors in the neighborhood. So it's happening. It's got to keep on that steady pressure.
Yep.
I know it sucks, but we got to embrace the suck like we do in yoga.
I mean, the first step is always awareness and education. And then the next step is, action. And just the awareness alone has saved lives. It's protected and saved lives. And, we're constantly getting contacted and told, like, hey, because of you, I detected my cancer early enough to where I don't have to do chemotherapy. I'm like, wow. We still have to deal with the healthcare system. That's like the next step. But outside of that, I'm just so grateful to have so many amazing people that are involved with this. Like, it's community driven. We've got allies like Libby. She runs the Volusia County group. And we're all kind of just coming together and unifying. And we call it an allyship, because that's what we do on a national level too. We've got these other organizations, whether it's EWG, NRDC, and we're Fight for Zero. And we may all be separate entities, and we may have our separate groups or organizations, but what really makes the difference is when we come together and we collaborate.
Right, because there's no way that all of us can attack all of this with just one group. I mean, you couldn't even, just from a marketing standpoint, and as an ecotourism person, I'm even pushing it, offering kayaking and paddleboarding and hiking and yoga, because luckily I can tie it all up in a little bow and it kind of like goes to the same niche market. But with environment and activism, it's kind of the same concept with the marketing and outreach. And all of us have our own specialized talents. And Fight for Zero is, the PFAS data, and also just tracking in general and reporting on things. And then there's other, like Orca is focused on the analyzing the tissue samples of the wildlife. So there's no way that, we could take the funding that we had for the PFAS study and still have funding left over because we know that the people with the dollars don't want to spend the dollars on the studies because they know that they're going to get answers they don't want. This happened
You're right about that.
This happened with the Florida scrub jay. Do you remember when, it was probably like 2016, maybe 2015. It was when, how the Lake Okeechobee thing comes and goes. Like people, it was back with the South Florida clean water movement days, right? When that was like the main clean water thing was the South Florida clean water management thing. So, God, my thought train just left the station. It was about
the organizations and how they're collaborating, and everybody's doing different things. And then you brought up the Everglades scrub jays. Mm-hmm.
Oh, the scrub jays. Okay, so you remember where they couldn't send the water south because of the grass sparrow? Because there's like a critically endangered sparrow.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So when I was doing my Florida Master Naturalist training, we had a guy from FWC come in, and he was responsible for banding and tracking the bands on the Florida scrub jays. Now, Florida scrub jays are extremely smart, and they know that you can't really trap them like that. You kind of have to like lure them in, and then kind of like they know how to avoid. You can't tag them. You can't band them like you can like a normal bird. They evade the little net things, little fly nets. They know how to avoid those. So he said that they stopped banding the critically endangered Florida scrub jay because nobody was using the data. So he wasn't going to keep stressing out himself and the birds for data that people weren't using. Now, Florida scrub jay, people have been pushing for that to become our state bird because our Florida state bird is the mockingbird. But for some reason, and this is what was told to me by one of my instructors through the Florida Master Naturalist program, I did mine in Volusia County. They were saying that Marion Hammer, who's a lobbyist for the NRA, is the one who keeps fighting the change from the mockingbird to the Florida scrub jay. So that got my wheels turning a little bit. And I'm thinking, so where do scrub jays live? And then thinking about the property that they live in, and then thinking about the person trying to block that, any kind of research going towards that bird. And those are like hunting enthusiasts. So why wouldn't we want data on the scrub jay? And then we had that, and then we think around that time we had the bear hunt, right? Oh. The bear hunt that was supposed to be a good thing, but then no one was following the rules, and they ended up killing a whole bunch of like suckling mother bears. And it makes me think that they don't. So same thing with funding the PFAS study and the contamination and the pollution studies. Because nobody wants to fund it because that means that they're going to get answers that are going to go against their bottom line. Like the answers and the data that they're going to get from, they're not going to fund research that's going to shut them down. Like they're not going to, or they're going to be held accountable.
I like that you're a questioner. I feel like there needs to be a lot more questioners in the world that just kind of go down that like, well, why is that? Why is that way? Like, I feel like there's not enough people doing that. And I mean, that's where it all started for me. Like, why did my whole family get cancer? And then it went from that to why is it that this happened? And I don't know. It just spiraled from there. But
because it doesn't make sense. The dots aren't connecting. And I, because of my neurodivergence and the way that my brain is wired, things must make sense. if it doesn't add up, I'm going to find the information until it adds up, which is why I used to be more one way politically, but then I started educating because the dots weren't connecting. And so that kind of took me kind of over here, and then, you know, I'm like kind of like going down all these rabbit holes. And now when people ask me like, what are you politically? Like,
I want to quickly go back to, you had mentioned cyanobacteria, and I wanted to go back to that really quick. As somebody that does eco tours, I know that like a lot of people get really angry with us because we're bringing awareness to cyanobacteria and harmful algal blooms. But you have taken a different approach to it. And maybe if there's anyone in the ecotourism industry that does paddleboarding or kayaking or water activities, what would you suggest to them as far as like if they see cyanobacteria or the green water, and like bringing awareness to the harms of that, like the bacterial infections that can come from that? Like how do you approach that as somebody that does tours?
Well, so being out in the wild, like being as far away from it, but also talking about it kind of helps. I do talk about, so when we're out on tours, I do talk about the collapse of the Indian River Lagoon ecosystem. I tell them exactly what it used to be and what it is now. But I reassure them, like, don't worry, nothing in here. Like, as long as you don't, I don't recommend submerging your mucous membranes. I had a guest who said they had an open cut on their foot and they're wondering if they should reschedule. They're like semi-local. I was like, absolutely. You should definitely reschedule. There's a girl on shore who stubbed her toe on a barnacle, walking barefoot. She's not an outdoors person. And then she didn't understand requirements. And she's like, should I just rinse it off in the lagoon water? I'm like, no. I'm like, let me go I got a med kit, like as a guide. I
was going to ask, do you have a first aid kit with you at all times?
One of my favorite things in the world is getting those little, the spray bottles of the hydrogen peroxide, and then also like the wound cleaning spray. Okay. So it's something that can sanitize and irrigate the wound at the same time. So I love the little spray bottles because even though it stings because it's peroxide, you can like get up in that scratch. Mm-hmm. And watch
and it's all about like if you get the cut, it's about how quickly you act usually. Like what you're saying, clean it out immediately, keep an eye on it if you see any swelling or any changes. Like this, we just had a fisherman over the summer because of our education and awareness. Like people are starting to catch this stuff early enough to where they're not losing an entire limb.
Right.
From the infection. And that's all we've ever asked for. I think I'm like really proud of like how far we've come with that education. And I'm glad that you are bringing that forward. Like, because we don't want to scare anyone from, still enjoying the outdoors. That's definitely not the direction we're taking. We just want people to be well informed so that they don't lose a limb or they don't get, severely sick. And I'm glad that you're helping bring that. And I've taken some boat tours in the county. We did a big, like a documentary earlier this year. It's not out yet. It's still in production, but we took a couple tours and it was interesting because the captains, they're always so open about what's going on and the collapse. And they even bring up like, well, now they're fixing it. So at least the conversations are happening. And I think that's what's important.
So you want to know what the algae was that killed all the clams? They're like back in the 90s.
What?
Pyrididium bahamense, which is the bioluminescent algae. Mm-hmm. So my bread and butter, in a way, it wasn't the only thing. The bioluminescent plankton has always been there. It's always glowed. It's not. It does have a mild toxin, but it's more toxic to the shellfish. And it harms them more, and they can adapt to it if they're healthy, if they have a healthy population. But that was the problem, is that they got harvested in the 90s past the point of sustainability, and it made their population extremely vulnerable. And they had a big bloom of the Pyrididium bahamense, and it just wiped out whatever was left of them until they found that population of the super clams in the mosquito lagoon that they're trying to reseed the lagoon with. So that's exciting. Another way that I address that too is I tell people straight up, do not launch. And I hate to do this. It's my own town. Mm-hmm. But I tell people who recreationally kayak and paddleboard, do not launch from Sandpoint Park in Titusville. Do not launch from Parish Park in Titusville. Like, don't just save yourself a lot of medical bills and don't.
Yeah.
And we used to launch out at Sandpoint Park when I worked for another outfitter. We would do our kayak rescue training. So where we'd like purposely dump ourselves out of the kayak, and we would practice getting each other back in the kayak in less than 2 minutes. Almost every single time I would have a sinus infection afterwards, because we would launch out of Sandpoint. This was like 18, right? 2018, 2019. Launch out of Sandpoint.
As a teenager, I did a lot of ski jets out there at Sandpoint, and we would go out to that island. I actually have photos of me as a teenager out there, like riding on, our family's ski jets. That was like something that we just did. And I'm with you. Like, it really makes me sad because it's such a perfect launching area, and but like with the levels of E. coli, and I think Libby and I are getting on later to talk about that specifically, but yeah, I'm with you. I think, until things clear up, I would steer clear. And I always tell people, definitely don't go in there in the hottest summer months, because that's when it's the worst, and that it's the bacteria is the worst. And that's where we normally see the algal blooms coming in. And
the rainy hot season, that's when everything blooms, and that's when it's most likely to be toxic. So that makes perfect sense. But, I just want to circle back, because with all the doom and gloom of it all, and we're definitely going to be talking about that in a few minutes, it's still so beautiful, Florida's backcountry and the rivers, lakes, and streams. And to get out and connect, it's really, to me, it's almost symbolic of my own personal journey to heal myself, because I actually was very phobic of nature, bugs, anything that, was in nature. I wasn't raised to appreciate nature, and just wanted to get off to the city. But then, in healing my body, I started getting in touch with nature. I fell in love with nature. No longer phobic. I welcome the spiders, save the spiders, offer the bees whatever they need. You want the keys, go ahead. But just to speak on that, if it weren't for making that connection, and in this past year really diving deeper into that connection with self-care, with connecting with nature, grounding. And people think grounding is just walking around barefoot. It is so much more. And I was one of those people who thought that's what it was, until I went through a series of training courses much earlier this year on the topic. So it all came together and came full circle for me in the complexities and diversities that are in nature. The challenges that are also complex and diverse require all of us who are complex and diverse to cure those problems and to live in harmony and create a harmonious balance. And so just touching on what you were saying, Rebecca, how no one of us can tackle this big problem. We all have our individual talents. And what you were saying, Stell, about unifying us in that cause, I just think it's a great kind of way to bring it together, like at the end of the year with the retreat, and have that moment for us to connect on that personal level and really get to the nature that we're fighting so hard to protect and enjoy it, and kind of cure ourselves of some of the toxicities that we take in on a yearly basis.
Yeah, a lot of the conflict that we see happening in the world is a mirror of the conflict that's happening within individuals. Ooh. And violence on our planet is violence against our bodies, and violence against any of us is violence against all of us.
Oh my gosh.
So the more that we can all do exactly what you all are talking about, and just put aside all the little crap that they tell us to argue over, and just focus on having the outside world and our inside worlds mirror, so that, we can have harmony, then like that, we could fix so many things if we could all just align to that frequency of of living in service, of living in community, of living in harmony with the planet, living with nature. The longest war that man has ever waged is the war against nature.
So well, with that being said, I think that's a good ending point. You just gave us so many quotes right there. So we're going to hop off here. Thank you for everyone that's joined us, that's commented. And if you're replaying, for Rebecca, put in the comments anything that reminds you of ecotourism.
Yeah.